I think the very first record I bought that most people couldn't understand was by Ray Charles called Don't Let the Sun Catch You Crying.
Don't let the sun catch you crying.
I didn't know what it was then, had no idea, but whatever it was, I wanted to be part of it.
Front door. You done daddy dirty.
Most of the artists that came out of Motown had no knowledge of what we were even doing or what it took, because they were only concerned about going in front of that audience and performing. Our job was not to worry about what they were doing, it was to learn how we could take care of the marketplace. Motown's particular sound was that it crossed over very quickly. Now, usually we had to work at that crossover, and that's a word that a lot of us didn't really care for, but it meant that you had to start at black radio and you crossed over to white radio.
On a radio dial, a black station in every market throughout the entire country at that particular time was on the right-hand side of the dial, which is the weakest signal. So consequently, you can only reach so many people. Whereas the top 40 station was located in the middle of the dial, which is the strongest signal. So the idea is, how can I cross this record over to pick up that top 40 play? That was the challenge. Your top executives were the guys that had been promoted from the field as the top sales managers, and they brought those same prejudices with them that were inborn. So consequently, they didn't see any need to put all that emphasis on black music. It's no big deal.
But that's what we had to deal with back in those days. You were going to be the last to get paid. You were going to have to argue for everything because you were the littlest guy in their mind on the block. You were just Motown. No one cared about Motown. We were the first ones, yeah. We had no one there. We had no one to go to. And you would go there and you had to use your own wit. Your job was to get music on the radio. In other words, if I had a new Junior Walker and the All-Stars or Dinah Ross and the Supremes, Gladys Knight, the job was getting that record on the radio. But the second part of the job was really the hard part. Now, how do you make sure it stays on the air?
But one thing about a salesman, when that product starts coming, that consumer starts buying those records, and those commission checks starts increasing, it changed a lot of minds. I was working for Mercury Records in Chicago, and I received a call from Clive Davis in New York. He had captured the rock business. He had captured the country business, all categories except black music, and he wanted it all. My mission was to create a department, a black division, to penetrate the black music business and to dominate it. And that's exactly what we did. Eventually, CBS, they had the largest stable in the world of black artists. So it moved just that fast, with that kind of saturation.
The black consumer thought about Warner Brothers as a completely pop company, so we had our own identity. With inside this huge monstrosity of a company, the Warner Brothers rhythm section. Didn't take a whole lot to think about that. Being a bass player, guitar player, drummer, that's your rhythm section. So when you saw a sign in the store that said Warner Brothers rhythm section, you probably realized that's where the Funkadelic's gonna be. So the rhythm section to me had a nice feel, it rolled off the tongue very easily, and it didn't offend anybody. It didn't say black, white, or anything else, and we created this thing called Black Music is Green. Green is about money. We became the #1 R&B company of the decade, but it didn't start out that way.
The black music business, there is a viable market out there for it. The key is exposure.
Back then, it was almost a mandatory thing in a promotional run back in the 70s for artists to do in stores. Because back then, artists weren't as accessible as they are now on TV or on the internet. So no one had any type of exposure to them personally. I was the first Black music marketing coordinator for WEA, Warning Electro-Atlantic Distribution Company. And one of our priorities was Rolls-Royce. I bought a milk truck for $100 and I spray painted it black, sprayed the wheels gold yellow, and put these big foam Rolls-Royce posters on either side and made this incredible visual wrapped vehicle. There were no companies wrapping vehicles at that time. This is back 1978, and Bootsy's Rubber Band was out. And Bootsy was a wild card. They didn't know what to do with this guy because he was just like, being wilder than George Clinton. And I had this record store in Berkeley, an infamous record store back in the 70s named Leopold's. And I put together a promotion where Bootsy meets the real Black Panther. By that I meant I went to the Circus Vargas. I don't know how I convinced them to bring a real Black Panther into the store in a cage and set it up in the store. Then have Bootsy come and meet the Black Panther in the store and sign autographs for his new record, Bootsy's Rubber Band. And they had a big elephant. And it was one of the biggest in-stores they've ever had at Leopold's ever. So I would just go to work. I was just like, let's do this, let's do that. Let's set up posters in the street. Let's put stickers on the ground, just doing what I thought would be something that would wake people up and they start talking about me.
There was a bunch of Black executives that was in the background pulling all of those strings and dealing and manipulating and making sure that product, those records would be heard and exposed on a national basis.
How many times were he probably told, you're not good enough, or you can't do it, or no one wants you, or we don't really care for what you're doing. But they finally made it. And we finally got it recorded. Then you were able to finally do a whole marketing campaign to get it to a place where you said, maybe I'll buy this.
The behind-the-scenes part of the industry is such an integral part of the whole process as much as the artist. Without it, the artist can't flourish.